anything you use at that point, you're going to be like, wow, this is great. It's also a very consistent design language. As much as they talk about, new product being so new and sleek, a lot of them do just look the same. And that you know what you're getting. That level of consistency is also really good. What's the hot news?
Ripped from the headlines.
Hello and welcome back to the Full Frame Podcast presented by Sony. Back in the studio again for another tech episode with Sean Elwood.
Great to be here.
How are you?
Yeah, great. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
A couple of announcements this week in terms of some other stuff happening in the industry, I guess.
Yeah, not a big news week for Sony, but
No.
we got a few things that are, I think, pretty talkable.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll probably touch on a bit of editing and then a bit about street photography because there's a couple of relevant things that have happened this week that are kind of exciting or at least interesting.
Yeah. I think Apple's dropped their new M5 chip MacBooks, and I think it's a good time to sort of talk about editing hardware. Everyone. I think it's so interesting because I've worked on both sides. I'm a Windows boy right now.
Yeah.
But I spent a long time doing strictly Apple. I've owned Apples, and really like in the creative industry, Apple of course has massive
Almost a
market
stranglehold.
share. Yeah. I actually looked up some statistics, and I don't know how accurate these are. It seems like they're probably a little bit old, but I've heard as high as 80%.
Wow.
In the creative industry is Mac. Probably depending on whether you count like people who are working in corporates or whatever. But
Yeah, okay.
very,
That's quite
very
high.
Yeah, really high.
This is a little anecdotal story. I won't name which brand it was because I do feel kind of unfortunate. I feel very sorry for them, but they were running a bit of they put on a beautiful dinner for a whole bunch of creators. There's probably about 60 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful dinner in Circular Quay. They ran through their full product lineup. I'm talking fans, cooling systems, graphics cards, the full kit and caboodle. And they had a keynote speaker, and then halfway through that keynote speaker's speech, they're like, all right, sweet, I just want to get a gauge of who's using Windows because all of this is custom PC stuff.
Yeah.
And no one in the room put their hand up. Everyone was using Mac, and I felt very sorry for the brand because unfortunately they spent a considerable amount of money to promote this product, and pretty much everyone in the room was unable to even engage with it.
It's tough out there. Yeah. I think they must have known. That's just the way it is right now, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to break in. What do you think it is that makes Apple hardware so popular with creatives?
I think the portability, just because when most people think of a traveling creative, they think MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I think the big thing for me, producing a lot of short form content, was AirDrop.
Yeah.
I got incredibly sick of Google Driving and Dropboxing folders and just simply getting files from your computer to a more portable device was not a headache, but it was a longer process. And I know that things like Google Photos and there's other storage solutions now, but when I switched to Mac, there wasn't.
Yeah.
So AirDrop was just massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a few things that I think, and it's kind of changed over time, but there's definitely a few things that like really stand out. I think the display technology is one thing. And it's not that PCs don't have great displays. They definitely do. But I think it's not the default.
Yeah.
With a if you buy an Apple, then you almost certainly going to get a display that's got, it's got good color calibration, it's got a great dynamic range, it's got great saturation. And they're generally
quite bright. Even the base models are 1600 nits, which is pretty decent. You can edit in daylight and you're not competing against, too much backlight or anything.
100%. Yeah. And obviously creatives are super sensitive to that sort of thing. And I think not everyone is going to go out and do reams and reams of research before they buy a editing station, and you only have to have one bad experience with a PC, and you're off it, right?
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
Yeah. The other thing as well is I think maybe Apple are potentially better at marketing for creatives, whereas some other PCs and also laptop brands, they're more focused on the holistic approach. They're trying to build a product as a jack of all trades, whereas Apple probably speak more to the creative and say, well, we know that you might want to edit in 265, H.265. We'll talk about this more in a minute, but they know that people are going to want to use this in the future. And they're like, sweet, we've already put a built-in decoder.
Mhm.
So you're going to have a faster processing. You're scrubbing through a timeline. You're not going to have any hiccups.
Right.
Like the fact that they're already talking about this stuff is kind of not necessarily future-proofing the product, but also putting that in the customer's mind, I guess, that they're saying, well, this is probably a direction that most software are going to lean into, or at least hardware will lean into it eventually.
Yep.
We're already ready for that.
Yeah. And I think the fact that they're kind of monolithic helps them so much with that, right? They can craft a message. Whereas for PC, it's like there's a million different vendors, there's a million different OEMs.
Yeah.
It's never going to work that way.
Yeah.
Do you think like just the kind of beautiful things aspect is part of it as well?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think design has a, without talking about another brand on a Sony podcast, but there's people buy specific cameras for the look and feel as much as they do for the actual performance of a camera.
Oh yeah.
And I'd say it's the same with laptops. It's like if something's sleek and beautiful and has a design language that you resonate with, you're more likely to buy it than even the most powerful custom build, just because it's easy and accessible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Apple have done a good job of talking about that as well, right? Like the name Johnny Ives is like well known, right? I can't think of a single PC designer. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but like it's just having the guy who's like designed so much of their hardware be. I mean, even though I think he's no longer with them, right?
I'm not sure.
Nah. Anyway, but he certainly made his name at Apple, and it's kind of crazy.
And it's also a very consistent design language. Like as much as they talk about new product being so new and sleek, a lot of them do just look the same. And that what you're getting.
Yeah.
And I think that level of consistency is also really good.
Yeah. Do you think they're like more durable? Like, do they last longer?
I don't know. I've only been with Mac for probably 4 years.
Yeah.
And I've had the same laptop the whole time.
Yeah. So your background with it then was you started off
Windows.
as a PC guy.
Yeah, Windows PC. So started with like Premiere Pro, had it crash, 800,000 times.
Uh-huh.
I actually had an old Vio laptop, which I loved.
Okay, great.
And I was editing on Premiere on that.
Yes.
And it was, I'm talking like 2016, 2015 kind of laptop. And I was using it all the way up to about 2019.
Yeah, right.
And it got to the point where just to run Premiere, I was putting frozen peas under the laptop to keep it cold enough. Yeah.
That's
so once
level.
you've edited like that, then going to Mac, or even going to a custom build or something.
Anything new is going to be incredible.
Anything you use at that point, you're going to be like, wow, this is great. Yeah.
Yeah. I started out as a PC user as a kid, and then went to like art school essentially, and that was all Mac. I got very used to Mac. I edited on Final Cut. This is pre X. Yeah. And worked professionally working on Mac. I owned Macs, and then came over to Sony. Everything's on PC.
Yeah.
And so like these days I'm primarily on PC, but you definitely you feel a difference in the philosophy. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, a corporate PC is never going to feel like a Mac.
You're not really driving a sports car then.
No. Well, and the philosophy behind how they're put. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Okay, so we talked a bit about the Apple hardware specifically, but I wanted to ask you about your setup for storage.
Oh,
so
this is a tricky one.
Well, it's important though.
It is very important.
Yeah.
So as someone who does like a lot of short form and less longer projects, I have a smaller need for something that's more permanent, like a NAS or a RAID setup. I'm predominantly storing things in the cloud, and then also using like a physical SSD backup. And I've got a series of hard drives that I'll kind of pull from, and once a project's finished, it's moving to a different SSD. I keep redundant backups across multiple, and then once the project's completed, I just leave one backup and one in the cloud. And that tends to work for me. But I know people that are working at dedicated like editing stations with larger projects, or maybe they're working with editors overseas or things like that. Having something that's a bit more permanent and robust is a bit more important. I also find that my volume of shooting is going down. So I'd say like hopefully the quality of my work is going up. But the volume that I'm shooting these days, because I'm running more workshops, I'm doing this podcast, I'm diversifying my own personal business a little bit, I guess.
Right.
My actual need for storage is actually going down. Which is great.
Yeah,
I like
love
that.
This is something that I was introduced to when I started shooting video professionally, was the concept of like a shooting ratio.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you would never think about as a casual shooter, but then when you become a professional, it's like, all right, well, now you like, as a matter of course, you're going out and shooting probably every day, every other day.
Yeah.
And you're, getting these volumes of footage, and there's expectations around how much footage you're holding, and that has a cost. And so now it's like, well, if you can shoot, 1 hour of footage for every 10 minutes of delivered footage, as opposed to shooting 10 hours of footage
for 1 or 10 minutes,
then that's a huge gain.
So I still contract to a lot of wedding businesses. So I'm not shooting as many of my own weddings, but I'm contracting a lot, either stills or video. I'm trying to keep those ratios very lean so that I'm able to get that footage off my SSDs as quick as possible and send them to the agency I'm working for.
Right.
So for a wedding, I'm keeping it under 200 gig because then I can still send it via, an online service as opposed to mailing someone a hard drive.
Yeah,
which is annoying.
Feels kind of old school.
Yeah, even though if you get express post, not that bad. Sure. And then for weddings, even then, I'm shooting under 2,000 images to deliver about 800. So it's almost 1 in 2 shots is a keeper, which is actually a pretty decent ratio.
It's really good.
Yeah, and I think that's also makes you a better photographer. If you look at, a gallery or you look at a shoot and then you can kind of boil it down and go, okay, well, 1 in every 3 is a keeper. That's a great hit rate because there's some people I know that shoot, 8,000 photos a wedding and only deliver 800. So you're like, oh, that ratio, it obviously changes throughout a day or whatever shoot you're on, because if you're shooting burst, you're going to increase it here. But then in moments like a dance floor where you're okay with a bit of the chaos, that's fine. Like you can include a lot more frames.
Yeah, it's like you're editing in camera.
Yeah.
Like not editing like Lightroom editing, but editing like selecting. You're picking your shots.
Yeah. And I think that obviously plays a lot into your storage. Yeah.
Well, what's your policy in terms of like what you retain? Like, are you...
okay. That's interesting.
I'm interested because, you're a professional and people lose their stuff.
Yeah.
They come back to you. Like, are you like, I'm going to hold it for a year or...
So for my online galleries for couples, I'll keep that forever.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily always keep the RAWs, but I keep all of the edited JPEGs. And I'm like, all right, well, I've got a copy of the JPEGs on a physical piece of storage, and then I've got their online gallery. And between the two, that's all I need. I shouldn't need, more and more and more backups. I generally keep all my RAW footage though. So that's just sitting on an SSD somewhere. Not in the intention that I will reuse it again, but I've had a couple of clients come back 2-3 years later and they go, hey, we're running this event again. We would really love that footage. And I can go, yes, sweet, I still have it, but let me look first. And then I go, sweet, yep, it's available. How much would you like to purchase it for? So not not trying to be too entrepreneurial, but hanging on to footage, especially for shoots that are reusable or events that might pop around again in the calendar year. Keep that footage, sit on it, because you don't know when a client might need it again, and that's just a little bit of extra cash in the bank.
It's huge value. Yeah, we had our Alpha Awards 10-year anniversary recently, and our agency Redscope, we went to them and said, hey, we want to do a highlights reel of the last 10 years, and they've shot like a half dozen of those events for us, and they pulled it together for us, no problems. And that obviously they've got a good backup policy that they're using, and it paid off for them big time there. So. Yeah,
storage is a really tricky one though. I think keeping all of your raw material, that adds up very quickly.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on what the project is and if there's any intention to reuse it. Like I've kept all of my footage from Antarctica and Japan, and any trip I do through Sony or personally, I keep all of that because I never know when
the cost to reacquire is super high, right?
Yeah, super high.
Yeah. So how are you when you get back from a shoot? What's your process for pulling stuff into the computer? Like, are you going off camera or are you going through a reader?
Going through the reader. So I've got the MRW G2, the super fast card reader.
Yep.
I'm lucky enough that I've got a full set of the CF Express Type A cards, which is insane. I won't quote the exact number, but it feels like I can pull 80 gig in, less than a minute.
Yeah,
which
they're fast.
super fast. And I know the new CF Express Type A's with the 4.0 rating, the new ones that are out now,
they're even faster.
With the G3 reader, like that's even faster again.
Yep.
So I can't wait to get my hands on one of those.
Yes.
But I basically build a file structure, which is like A cam, B cam, C cam.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than just labeling it as A cam, I actually label what camera it was shot on.
Oh, nice.
Just so I know, because when I set up for an interview or I've set up at a wedding and I know that I'm like, all right, sweet, I'm using the FX camera as my A cam because it's got the internal fan. It's the most reliable one for long form recording. So I know that's my A cam. And that way when I'm editing and I can see the file names coming into DaVinci, all the clips in the camera, I don't leave them as the C00 whatever code. Yeah. I've all set them to the name of the camera. So if it's FX30, the code will be FX30 and then the file name.
You don't have special names for them?
No.
Messy.
No, I've got like a FX or I've got like A93 or A1 Mark II. And then when I pull the files into DaVinci, I actually know, oh, that's from this camera and I put this camera here.
Right.
And it means that pulling it through, or if I was handing it off to another editor, I could just say, hey, FX30 footage is all A cam. And then this is all B cam. And then if another editor was looking at that, they know exactly what was shot where and what all that footage in that bin is going to be about. So then,
obviously, like your use case isn't exactly the standard. Like for people who are just shooting at home, like what would your recommendation be?
See, this is a tricky one. Some people I know organize things by date and time, but then sorting through files becomes like really tricky because you're like, especially when you're shooting with multiple cameras, because then you're like, oh, this was on this date. And then you go, all right, well, this was shot at this time. And then you're like, oh, well, then I've actually got footage from 3 cameras from this time period. And then it gets messy very quickly. I usually structure everything as like what the shoot was. And then I divide my subfolders into what cameras and then an audio folder. So that way it's not all mixed in.
How do you feel about just for home users?
For home
users? Letting Lightroom handle it.
Oh, inside Lightroom. I'm just talking about like when you drag it in.
No, totally.
Oh, if it's just for stills in Lightroom, this is controversial because Pat K told me, he's like, everything's in one big Lightroom catalog.
Yeah.
That catalog must be like hundreds of gigs big, like building all those previews. And then he has it all divided into subfolders, so it's all easily accessible. I generally make a new catalog for every shoot.
Yeah, okay.
One, because it keeps everything contained, and it means that if I have to move devices, because I'm using Lightroom Classic, so it's not syncing with the cloud, it means that if I have to change, buy a new MacBook, blah, 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 I can still drag those catalogs across.
Yeah.
And it's not moving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Also helps when you, so for me, it's a bit different, but shooting professionally, sometimes I'm handing off smart previews before I'm handing off the full RAWs. So sending off smart previews with the Lightroom catalog as like a little zip folder.
That's nice.
I can just send things off quickly.
Yeah.
That's not for everyone.
Yeah, totally.
I think for most people though, like, just build a nice catalog system in Lightroom, whether that's individual catalogs or if you've just got one catalog and you build a bunch of collections. But divide them up by like what the shoot was, because it's much easier for people's brains to remember what you did that day as opposed to the date. Because if you go by date, you're like, what did I do on the 28th of October in 2017?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, oh, I was in Japan, I was in Kyoto or something like that.
Yeah.
Being able to find where you were, I think, is probably more useful.
Yeah, and the way that the tagging works now with the app as well is really nice. You can geotag and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of editing and like shooting for editing, are you locked in on a particular file format? I'm talking about stills here.
Yeah.
Are you like just a RAW guy, or are you like RAW and JPEG?
Yeah, I'm just pure RAW. I'll shoot RAW to 2 cards for everything, even my own personal work, because you never know when something might happen. I've actually never had any bad experiences with cards, but you never know. Like something could happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm always shooting to 2 cards, and I shoot RAW to both, just as a backup. I know some people that shoot RAW to one, JPEG to another.
Yep.
But then, or they do RAW to one and then RAW and JPEG to another. But then I'm like, one card is gonna run out of storage faster than the other, and then that becomes a headache when you start backing things up, because you're like, oh, why is this one 200 gig and this one's only 120? And then you start like the inconsistency in the card space becomes kind of a headache, especially when you're shooting large volumes.
And RAW and JPEG can have a bit more overhead as well. Like certain cameras, it's going to like lower your buffer. It's going to even lower your max burst, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so things like that, I'm just doing RAW. Generally RAW compressed. Unless I'm shooting Astro, then I'll just quickly click it back to uncompressed, because I feel like Astro is that one genre where you're actually, you know what? I want everything the sensor can give me.
Yeah.
Let's just take it all.
Yeah, no, I think I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
For me, I'm typically a RAW shooter, but I will sometimes, if I have like a specific thing I'm shooting and I know that it's going to be like real short turnaround and this is just going to go straight into somebody's inbox, I will just switch it to JPEG. If I know it's going to be like, I'm not even going to pull this into Lightroom. This is going to go into Windows Explorer.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pick the winners and I'm going to send them. JPEG's fine.
Okay. Yeah, really quick.
But usually RAW, it's coming through Lightroom and it's all just going to be through the same stream.
Lightroom now supports it, but you can, all of the new Sony picture profiles, not the picture profiles, the creative styles, they're now in Lightroom as well. So it's like FL, we used to have, traditionally was FL, but now there's FL2, FL3.
Yeah, they're nice.
I think they came out with they came out with the RX1R Mark III.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And they're being patched into others.
Yeah, so they've been patched into others, and I just got an Alpha 1 Mark II, and I think it's got it as well. But being able to use those is very fun as well. Like, so I've been playing with the JPEG a little bit.
Yeah.
Because in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to shoot a wedding and just everything's built in FL3 because it looks great.
Yeah.
And then just shoot it off the same day.
There's a lot of online communities being built around those things now.
Yeah.
You know, like there's people sharing their brews and what have you.
Yeah, in the same way that like a recipe for a simulation exists in DaVinci or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can build a little recipe
it's
in
like
the picture profile.
Yeah. For your stills.
Yeah. It does mean though that any inconsistencies in shooting become more apparent. So if you're not using ISO auto and you're doing things manually, you can't undercook or overcook as much because you're like, you won't be able to change it.
It's not going to sit in the right place for you a lot or whatever, Video. Same question. Like, are you like like formats? Like, are you like a log guy? 100%.
Yeah. Everything is shot in 422 10-bit S-Log3, the S-Gamut 3 Cine. So that's the second. It comes default now in the Sony cameras, but there's two versions of it. The normal S-Gamut one has a little bit more information in the green end of the color space, whereas S-Gamut 3 Cine has a bit more in the red. So I'm always using that one because it probably gives better skin reproduction, and that's kind of why it's the default now.
Yep.
I'm always shooting in that. I'm switching between the XABC-S and the XABC-SI. The S is for weddings because I'm just like churning through footage.
Yep.
Whereas I use the SI, so that's the all intro one. I'm using that predominantly for all of my other work.
Yeah. Would you bother, like, if they're doing like a rice throw or something, are you going to switch over to SI just so that you don't get the chunkiness? Just let it go.
Not because if it's a fast-paced shooting environment, it's probably like, I know it's only 2 seconds to change that over, but it's just for the sake of it.
Yeah, makes sense. And if you don't notice it in the end product.
Yeah, I think most people don't notice it in the end.
Yeah.
So I'm always shooting in that format, and I'm always previewing with one of the Red Scope. I have one that was built for the FX30, but it works fantastic on any of the other cameras. It's one of the Red Scope LUTs called Filmic. It's just got a little bit of blue in the shadows compared to like the traditional Sony S709 LUT.
Yeah, nice.
So it looks pretty similar, but it's got a little bit of blue in the shadows, and the highlight roll-off is a bit smoother, which I particularly enjoy.
I think everyone enjoys a smooth highlight roll-off.
Yeah, and that's another really good tip is like shooting log isn't hard. Most people are kind of across it. I feel like the community itself is very embracing this whole like color grading thing at the moment. Even though I'm not calling it a thing, it's been around forever. But I feel like the actual creative industry is very like in tune with it at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
But previewing with a LUT. So in the Sony cameras now, you can just do an S709 preview, and you can choose to bake it in or not bake it in. But if you find someone that you particularly like, someone like Philip Bloom, there's Phantom LUTs. There's thousands of resources now from even actually a lot of the Sony ambassadors in the US have released a few. The Red Scope ones are fantastic. Yeah, being able to preview that in camera just really helps with the whole process of exposing log. because if you use the preview, you're like, once it's graded, it's going to look like this.
Yeah. I have to go into my mind palace.
Yeah, you don't have to do this whole. You don't need false color as often.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily need waveform because
if the picture looks good,
if it looks good, it looks good.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Have you messed with H.265 much?
No, not as much as I probably should have. When it was first kind of put into the Alpha lineup, that would have been the Alpha 7S Mark III.
Yeah.
Yeah. At that time, I think we were only just getting the first MacBook M1 chips that had the built-in decoder.
I think it actually, now that I'm thinking back on it, I think it might have been after that. Because
it definitely was. The HS format, I think S Mark III, because I won't name what brand, but there was another camera that came out around a similar time, and no one could edit any of the footages.
Right, because that was the only thing they offered.
They only offered a H.265 format, and people's MacBooks were melting.
Yes, yeah. And so, I mean, it's interesting because, it has been quite hard for a while. But, one of the reasons I mention it in this context is Apple's been one of the first to kind of get on board with having hardware acceleration for H.265.
Yeah.
And now, if you're on an Apple, you can probably handle it. And to be fair, a lot of PCs. But certainly the M5 chip. I think the M4 chip is also fine with it. Can do H.265 decoding through hardware, and it's not as much of an issue. But for anyone who's like not aware, H.265 is like H.264 is what we've had for years and years and years.
It's what we think of as like MP4.
MP4 is H.264, yeah. And unfortunately, video formats are a nightmare, and nothing. The thing that you call it, like a MOV file or an MP4 or whatever it is, tells you nothing about what's on the inside. It's like it tells you like what the wrapper is, but it tells you.
It just says that this
nothing.
moves, unlike a still image.
Yeah,
that's all it says.
That's basically all it is. It's like it's a movie file of some kind. But so most people don't really know about like H.264, H.265, but that's what's like actually how this thing is encoded. And it's similar to like JPEG is the still equivalent of H.264. And more recently, we've got HEIF files. So if you've got like a more recent mobile phone, it probably shoots HEIF stills. And the video equivalent of that is H.265. And they're like more image quality for your data buck.
Yeah, more compression, but still retaining a lot of the quality.
That's
right.
And
the way that we teach it at workshops is like you're packing for a holiday, and MP4 or H.264 is you're throwing everything in the suitcase kind of haphazardly, but then when the computer gets to the other end, they can just like pull it out very quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas H.265 is like, we're shrink wrapping
You've
everything.
Marie Kondo'd everything, and it's...
Yeah, everything's packed so meticulously, so you can fit way more in the suitcase. But then the issue then was, and traditionally it was less so now, but the issue was that then your computer opens the suitcase and goes, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
and it has a lot of trouble unpacking it all.
Exactly, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
And I mean, the good thing now is there's hardware that takes care of the unpacking for you, which, previously you'd get onto the timeline and you'd try and like scrub through, and your computer would be like, whoa. Hold up. And, it would just take ages to like chug through. And if you had layers like H.265 over H.265, you try and do a crossfade, God help you, because then you just doubled your trouble.
I haven't run into that. I'm still using an M2 MacBook Pro.
Right.
But every now and again, if I'm doing like subtitles and then a motion graphic layer, and then maybe a particularly hefty color grade, and then I'm using some footage and I've got multi-layers, or I'm applying... once I've kind of hit 6 layers in DaVinci, my laptop's like...
Just breathe through it.
Yeah.
So you're a DaVinci guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Recent switch. A year or two.
And just to have the color tools like close to hand, basically?
Yeah, I found that I didn't know enough about color interpretation, and I'm still learning a lot. But the way that Premiere kind of looks at files, I explain it like it's like having a paddock. And so all of your color is inside this little fence. And if the color information that you want to work with exceeds the bounds of that fence, you start running into problems like clipping or just misinterpretation of colors. So, once you hit a certain saturation of a certain color, if it's outside that fence, the computer is just going to interpret it as the one color of red or the one color of blue or green. Whereas at least within DaVinci, you have the ability to move the size of that fence to fit the color space that you're working in.
Yeah, they're always in like a floating point style thing.
Yeah, and so you've got this ability to be like, hey, I'm actually using S-Log3 footage. I need you to make the fence this big. And then you can make the fence even bigger because you can work in DaVinci Wide Gamut, which is probably one of the largest color spaces available, so that you know that any tweaks you make aren't going to kind of like get too close to the edge of that fence.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you can always pull it back.
But also I found, like, I'm not trying to bash Premiere, because I think Premiere is still if I was just purely cutting footage, I'm much faster in Premiere.
Yeah.
But I found that a lot of the tools or plugins in Premiere kind of take a lot of memorization. You have to remember, I need to do this. And like, if you want to do like an RGB split where it kind of like, you're splitting the colors either side of your subject, or doing some kind of fun motion graphic stuff, or even just like special effects. As soon as you do that in Premiere, you're looking at maybe opening After Effects, or you're adding like 15 different layers, and you're like, I've got to open arithmetic, and red has to be 0.015. And like you're doing all this kind of stuff. Whereas then if you just in DaVinci, you're like, I want some halation. You just drop and drag.
Yeah.
And I think those tools make DaVinci itself is quite overwhelming for a beginner, but the tools, kind of the effect tools where you can get really creative, those are actually really simplified.
You ever mess with any of that Final Cut?
No, never used Final Cut.
Used it?
Never used it.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I cut with it for many years professionally, and then I left the ecosystem before the whole kind of Final Cut X debacle. Yeah. I think it's fair. I think it's uncontroversial to say that was a bit of a debacle.
Okay.
But from what I've heard, Final Cut X is kind of good again.
Yeah, I've heard the same. I know a lot of people not necessarily switching back, but using it for smaller projects where like, you know what, I actually don't need Premiere or DaVinci. I'll just quickly cut something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've read a few people who are even like, it's coming back, people, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Any I guess maybe just to round out this topic, like any tips and tricks for people dealing with hardware, wrangling, data
wrangling? I would say the first thing is just the time you will save. Buy good cards. Like buying bucket loads of cheap 64 gig cards that, something might go wrong in 5 years' time. It might not, but buying good cards isn't necessarily about the reliability always. For me, it's the speed of transfer. Like, when I was in Antarctica, I would come back off the Zodiac. I could pull all my video and stills files off, and then I could have a gallery edited in about 15 minutes. And that was, my selects, and then I could put that up on my stories and do all that. But you wouldn't be able to do that on a really cheap card.
Yep.
Like you'd be waiting 15 minutes just to transfer that footage.
Yeah, and if you got multiple cards, then,
Yeah. I shot a job months and months ago for a friend, and we were doing a live... Oh, it wasn't a live. I think it was going to be like a recut of a concert. So we had like 4 FX6s plus my FX30 and a couple of other cameras, and we're doing, effectively what will be a multicam edit.
Yeah.
And I had the fast cards, but I got the back of the queue. And so we're all transferring, an hour and a half of 10-bit XAVC SI, highest quality.
Yeah.
We're all transferring, hundreds and hundreds of gigs. The shoot finished at 11:30. We didn't finish wrangling till like 2 a.m. because we were just waiting, 6 or 7 of us all just slowly transferring our files over and then doing the backup. Yeah.
No good.
It was great. We just hung out in the green room, but that like the time that an effort that was worth, just buy fast cards. Just do it. My other advice would be I delete as I go. So when I'm pulling files into Lightroom, for stills at least, just go through and find your selects and flag them, and then you can just delete anything that's not flagged.
Yeah. Nice.
Some people do that in just like the native preview in Windows or Mac, and then they import what's left over. But it's so fast to just sit there with the arrow key and then the flag key and just bang, 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 done. And then you just go file, delete all non-flagged, and then they're all gone, and then you can just slap a preset on it, go through, make your tweaks, gallery done. It's really fast.
Yeah. Nice.
Same with video. If I'm scrubbing through the bin, so before I put them into the timeline, I'm just scrubbing through the bin. Any clip that I'm like, I'm not going to use that, just get it out of the bin, because then your computer's still leaving it there, processing it,
Mhm.
ready for you to use. Whereas if you get it out of the bin, it's just ignoring
It's
it.
gone.
Yeah. What's the hot news?
Ripped from the headlines.
Ripped from the headlines.
Uzbekistan is talking about banning photographing people in public places, which is a big move. And I thought it was a good kind of jumping off point to talk about street photography
Yeah.
and kind of its status in 2025,
Yeah.
where we're at.
Yeah. We'll probably have to dig into the actual current law
Yeah.
first. Because as far as I'm aware, if you're in a public place, you can photograph another person in a public place.
Yeah.
The law gets very grey around once you're in a private space photographing someone in a public, or you're in public photographing someone in their private space. That's when things get really interesting.
Right.
But it is an interesting topic to kind of dig into because people feel very differently about it.
Absolutely.
And, it changes how you shoot, what you shoot, and the style. I mean, I did a little bit of research before this, but some street photographers build their whole name on being inconspicuous and, the whole tradition of, blacking out your camera so no one can see it, using something small and light. And then there's other people that are like putting a strobe, like, off-camera flash, like right in someone's face.
Yep.
So it just depends.
Yeah. So I mean, like in Australia, for example, there's, it all kind of rotates around this idea of like presumption of privacy. Like where can you have a presumption of privacy? And basically, like if you're in a private space, if you're in your home, if you're in, a place that obviously should be private, like a change room or a bathroom, then you have a presumption of privacy. People can't photograph you there. But if you're out in a public space, if you're, probably on the street, somewhere like that, if you're in a library or anything like that, you essentially have no cause to prevent someone from taking a photo of you. You can't say, "Hey, stop taking my photo."
Yeah.
I think there's always a tension between what's legally required and then what's like the right thing to do as a photographer.
Yeah, like if I'm not really a big street photographer, but I definitely did a little bit of it when I first started and moved to Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a couple of circumstances maybe where someone's like, "Oh, I saw you take a photo of me. Would you mind deleting it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Unless it was a banger. No. But no, if someone asks or presents kind of an issue with it, the first thing you should do is, be open and communicative and be like,
plenty
"Yeah,
more
sure."
fish in the sea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's always easy to say in with cool heads, right? I think that part of the tension is that a lot of people who are trying out some street photography, they want to feel kind of safe and secure. You want to have like I know what my rights are, and I know that I'm in between the lines here. And unfortunately, I think the reality is that there's no clear lines really.
Yeah.
You do have to kind of engage with the cut and thrust of some people are fine with you taking their photo and others aren't. And you unfortunately are probably going to just have to take each case by case.
Yeah, and I think that also made me think just then about the scale of how big that person's represented in the frame. Because if you're doing a street photo at 14 mil, it's right down George Street in the city, the likelihood of being able to identify someone or even the presence of someone in that frame, they're going to be minuscule. Whereas you taking photo of, say, like a street vendor or a musician or a busker or someone crossing the street on a 85 or a 70 to 200, they are the key focus. Like they are very present in the frame. Yeah.
And there's a difference between what most of us are probably doing with street photography and then photojournalism. Because if you're a photojournalist and you've caught someone doing something naughty, then and they say to you, "You took my photo, you need to delete it." Well, you're a photojournalist. That's your job. You are going to say, "No, I took the photo. You're in a public place." Like, you got no leg to stand on.
Something naughty, that's on you.
That's right. That's the nature of the beast there. But in terms of etiquette for street photography, I think most people would agree that the right thing to do is to work with people's wishes. To be polite.
But that also interplays with the fact that some purists would say that street photography needs to be candid.
Yeah.
And then others would say that no, like you can engage with people on the street and ask to take their photo and things like that. So I think that becomes very interesting. Listening to Matt Abbott talk about, his experience shooting, where he was like, you have to really get to know the person that you're photographing, because then the story that develops from that is going to be far more interesting. Whereas some other street photographers are like, no, there's the scene, I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah.
But it depends on the subject matter. Like some people are shooting the way the light hits the architecture, and then they're using a person as like a reference point. And then there's other street photographers that are actually approaching people. I'm thinking like Bruce Gilden.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, direct flash, quite a wide angle lens, getting, extremely close to people on the street.
Yeah.
And it's very, and like what I'd say is like an aggressive street
It's kind
style.
of confrontational.
Yeah, very confrontational.
Yeah. And I mean, he was probably a kind of street photographer who, if someone said delete that photo, he'd be like, no shot. Like,
yeah.
I got what I came for. And I, in the end, I guess, that comes down to that comes down to his personal decision and his kind of artistic practice. But if you're trying to make life easier for other street photographers and maybe contribute in a positive way to the discourse around street photography and photography in public places, the Bruce Gilden may not be the way to go.
Yeah. It is interesting how the style has changed though, because in preparation for this episode, I was looking at a few famous photographers and then how the styles changed, where it was very much like documenting daily life and, the people of a street or a location. And now street photography has, to a degree, kind of morphed with travel a little bit, where it's about the location, but due to things like social media and the way that we format images now, and we're shooting vertical compared to landscape, it has kind of morphed with this more minimal, I'd say like street scene, but not necessarily like street life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, just especially when I'm thinking about like people in my kind of demographic, where they're shooting more of those kind of environmental street scenes and then occasionally doing kind of a street portrait.
Yep.
But not in the same style that, the stuff from the early 40s and 50s. It's they're very different.
There's definitely, I think there is a kind of probably, a half dozen different style or like broad kinds of street photo. You have, photos of like remarkable people, right? You see someone who's dressed in just a crazy way or like incredibly well dressed, and you just get that shot, and that can be the whole point of the shot. Is just look at this person. You can have shots where there's some kind of incredible light happening in the street, and it just is about the aesthetic of, look at this place and this time and how beautiful this was. You can have a shot that talks about like a kind of moment, like you think of shots of like Shibuya Crossing or places where there's an incredible press of people or people doing something unique.
I mean, like Henry Cartier-Bresson wrote a whole book called The Decisive Moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and definitely I think poignant moments or stuff like that. Human interactions that can be a kind of thing. And then you've also got like this style of street photography that I think of as like visual puns. Like you have a person standing maybe in front of a sculpture of a bird, and like you catch them in this way where it looks like there's wings coming out of their back or something, right?
Yeah. Or like smoking in front of a no smoking sign. It's just like these little moments that not necessarily would make you laugh in real life, but you're like in an image, you're like, huh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's kind of this like, it's not a play on words, but it's like a play on looks, a play on things. And that's all kind of like in the mix with street photography. It's not one thing.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most diverse genres potentially.
Definitely can be.
Yeah.
And I think that also feeds into practice though. So, the way different street photographers definitely will specialize in different elements of that, right?
Yeah.
You'll have people who are like, I'm out to shoot interesting looking people. That's what they're looking for. And so when you look at their page, it's full of that. Yeah. Or, you see street photographers who specialize in the like visual pun thing of like, they're always looking for like, here's a thing that I can like juxtapose something against. And maybe they're just going to sit there with their frame set.
And just wait.
And wait for like the right person to come into frame and stand in the right place.
Yeah.
And it does make it difficult as a genre. When you're talking about like judging it for a competition or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're often dealing with different images that are ultimately like just trying to do different things, and then trying to make an apples to apples comparison can be a real challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, because an image might stand out specifically because, like you said, it can be more emotive or more funny, but then there's still other genres of street photography where, it might be something highly political or something like that, which has a lot more depth to it, but visually might not be, say, as appealing or something like that. I think of like Pat Kay's style. I talk about Pat Kay a lot because it was the first episode on the podcast, but someone like Pat, where he was talking about, kind of like waiting for the right frame, where you'll find the composition, you've got good light, and then you're waiting for like the right position of someone like walking across or something like that. And then there's other people that are very run and gun, and they're just shooting and just hoping that, not hoping, but they're working on developing define the frame as opposed to just kind of
they're like panning
they're
for
not
gold,
camping
right?
a spot. Yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot through and then you find the gold.
Yeah.
I mean, when street photography sort of started, I guess, like, you're talking about your classics like Cartier-Bresson and all the, the Leica shooters and what have you. Like, it was very much like 35 mil, maybe 50 mil was what you were shooting for that kind of thing. Maybe some people were shooting 24.
But that's also a historical thing. Street photography only really took off because of the 35 millimeter camera, whereas before that with like 4x5 and like
everything was
quite
in the
chunky.
hood and exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's true. Yeah. But I'm thinking, do you think that the hardware has changed significantly? Like, I feel like I see more people shooting telephoto for street these days.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. I think so. I think a lot of photographers maybe get their standard lens or some of their primes first, and then the next big purchase is a 70-200. And once they have that 70-200, it's such a beautiful focal length to have. People kind of want to use it. You want to use it, and you want to use it in scenarios that you haven't traditionally used it in before.
And I think cities often offer a lot of opportunities for playing with the compression that you get out of a long lens.
Yeah.
You can combine a foreground subject with something interesting in the background, and you'll have these long kind of corridors with a lot of depth and a lot of interest.
Yeah, and I think singling out a specific character on the street, it's much easier to just pick them out on a 70-200 or an 85. Yeah. I'm thinking about people shooting restaurants or like kitchens with all the steam and everything. Almost every one of those shots is on a 70-200.
Yeah.
And I think, it's just so you can get that depth, but then also show the atmosphere without just like filling the frame with 1,000 tourists.
And it can also be a great way to reduce friction as a street photographer.
Yeah.
You can, if you're talking about like shooting unobserved, of course, like, being low key and using a smaller camera can help, but also like not being in the vicinity.
Yeah, being 400
goes a
meters
long
away.
way.
Yeah, it definitely would. And I think, those kind of like scenes where it's someone performing an activity. So whether that's like a musician or someone in a kitchen cooking. I'm using the kitchen one a lot because I see those kind of images a lot, and they always look great because just the way the light plays.
Kitchens are so photogenic.
Yeah.
And you get atmospherics, which in a lot of cities, you don't get that much atmospherics.
Yeah, and that's why people love New York as a destination.
There's always fog coming out of the
fog and the steam coming out of the...
Smells like ass. Looks incredible.
So like having a telly, you can just punch right in and get that. And also just remove those distractions because like I like a very clean frame, and I also like something with a very homogeneous color palette, or at least, tricolors. I want 3 colors in the frame. I want, like the gray of the concrete, and then I want, skin tone, and then maybe one other color to kind of tie the image together. Whereas shooting those wider street scenes now, where I think are quite difficult, unless you're shooting black and white. But those street scenes are really difficult to shoot on a wide angle lens because if you've got a lot of people in frame, everyone's wearing, you've got pink on this side, orange there, you've got the blue sky, gray concrete, like there's just too much happening.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I don't like that, but some people love it. Some people love the chaos in it. So it's very subjective.
Yeah. And I mean, probably as between that and portraiture, like it's one of those genres of photography where your personality is really going to come into it.
And the personality affects how you shoot and also like what you shoot as well. So if you're a really extroverted person, you probably have no issue walking up to someone with a 35 mil and getting nice and close. Whereas, yeah, if you're a bit more of an introvert or potentially you don't like the conflict, then a 70-200 is gonna fulfill you without you having to get too close.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true.
I was going to talk about using like wide area autofocus with like IAF. I remember when autofocus was first put in the Alpha 9, 7 Mark III kind of era. And suddenly, instead of always having to like pick up the back of the camera and check that you were focusing on the correct point, you could set it to zone or wide and, you know, in the center of frame-ish or like just off to one of the thirds maybe. And you could shoot from the hip pretty reliably.
Yeah.
And that meant that people weren't necessarily aware that you were taking their photo.
Yeah.
And I like the view that shooting from the hip gives. I think it doesn't distort the body in any way, whereas shooting from the eye, sometimes you're looking down on someone, or if you shoot low, you're looking up and it's kind of distorting the person. Whereas shooting at kind of like waist level or just below waist level, it's kind of the midpoint on a person's frame. That's where I shoot all my video as well. That's why, I mean, that's the whole reason why cine saddles exist.
Yes.
But shooting from that midpoint, everyone's kind of very evenly distributed, and it's a great place because your camera hangs there naturally if you're using a neck strap, and then you can just fire off frame after frame.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the. I think it's one of the early lessons that you learn in both photography and video is, you know, getting away from always being at like your eye level. You know, get high, get low, you know, all that stuff. And yeah, it serves double purpose for street because you also get the stealth benefits.
The stealth mode.
Yeah. I was gonna just maybe try and talk about street as part of travel. And especially like going overseas, because it is something that, you know, the etiquette can change outside of you know, your own country, and you know, this Uzbekistan thing is
interesting,
right? Yeah, it's actually interesting reading around that. Apparently, and I mean, this is probably a sad reflection on the way the world is these days, but it seems like maybe that law is being put into effect not so much because of street photography and people's social sensitivities, but more because of journalism, and there's a lot of corruption, and they want to be able to imprison people who reveal that corruption.
Yeah, I saw an interview a while ago from someone who used to work for MI6, and they said if you get caught photographing something that you're not supposed to be photographing, if you're using a high-tech gadget or something, you're very clearly a spy. And he was saying that, you know, they used off-the-shelf camera gear, and then you put on the tan vest, you pretend to be a tourist, and you're like, oh, I was just taking a photo of that power plant because it looked really nice, and like things like that. And they were saying that, because then that's actually easier than using all this other high-tech stuff.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, the gear is great. I'm sure it does the trick.
Yeah. I wonder, so that's interesting for the Uzbekistan thing. But
I mean, I think, you know, it's probably quite timely these days is, you know, a lot of people going to Japan, very popular place for photography and for street photography especially. And it does kind of seem like, you know, there is a bit of pushback against.
Yeah. I think Japan has a very rich culture in photography though. So being around cameras or seeing cameras on the street isn't necessarily the bit that scares people. I think it's the volume of tourists potentially like just capturing stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking of the Coldplay moment as well, like the Coldplay,
with the yeah. Well, that's almost leaning back toward photojournalism, although of course it wasn't. You know, it was just part of the production. But
what you do in a public space is also on you.
Yeah, it's very true. But we do have this kind of sensibility these days of, you know, if someone takes your photo in a public place, especially, I think it is doubly so around kids. But
yeah, definitely.
You know, a feeling that your image can be a point of vulnerability.
Yeah, and I think even 10 years ago, if someone took a photo of you in the background, especially if it was just a phone photo, you'd be like neither here nor there. But now that, you know, things like deepfakes and AI, you can generate images of people like that. I think people probably are a little bit more hesitant as to putting their image out there.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that as well. I think that's a totally valid point of concern. Yeah.
Yeah, it can feel a bit scary. Any like particular you know, examples of street photography that you have kind of resonated with recently?
We talked about it a little bit at Scenescape, but anything with atmospherics. So we talked to Mike and Willis, and they were talking about, you know, photographing a location in the snow or on a rainy day or something like that, where you're just adding so much more mood to the image.
Yeah.
And I think that style is really exciting. But also, street photography is fantastic for travel because you're in a, really unique location. There's unique people, unique architecture. Even in Japan, like the light behaved so differently. It was so soft and diffused to what I'm used to here in Sydney.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is incredible. And I'm not even a big street photographer. And we were around Asakusa and I was like, this is incredible. But yeah, it's something that's very exciting, I think.
Yeah, I do think in Australia we have like a particular style of like direct light and like big open sky that is kind of the look of Australia to some degree. And there's other places that can kind of look a bit like it, but we definitely have a kind of style, it's kind of like a lack of atmospherics really that's like quite distinctive.
And we have such bright and harsh light. And a lot of this architecture, at least in Sydney with what I'm familiar with, is a lot of sandstone.
Yeah.
So you've got this very kind of like warm, yellowy palette. Whereas when you compare that to, the holy grail of street photography, which is New York City.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of buildings also have flags on them. So you've got this really strong, vibrant kind of motif of having the red and the blue with the grey, which is a great color combination anyway.
Yeah.
And then you're integrating, fashion's very big. There's a lot of colorful characters. So you're likely to kind of get something very exciting.
Yep.
Whereas maybe in other parts of the world where it's the architecture's very minimal or something like that, you're getting a very different look.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bad, but you're just getting a very different look.
I think that's why Tokyo, Japan in general offers so much, right? Tokyo, you got all the neon, incredible street scenes, especially at night. Osaka as well. They both have that very... And I think, this is maybe something that you find across Asia in a lot of kind of Asian megacities is this like profusion of neon. But yeah, it's something that you just would struggle to find elsewhere. I guess you go to Times Square, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah. And there's just some things that look fantastic when they're out of focus and it's like leaves on trees and neon signs. And so, a destination like Japan or like specifically Tokyo where you can get things like cherry blossoms, but then you also get the neon signs at night. It's like a street photographer's dream.
Yeah. And then like European cities got their own thing, right? The architecture there is incredible. You can get that. And it's also often you get a lot more access to like atmospherics, right? You want to see fog, you want to see stuff like that. You're going to get a lot more of it in Europe, or just in higher latitudes or lower.
But it's interesting that there's certain cities that propagate a lot of street photographers compared to somewhere like Sydney.
Right.
Actually, I think Sydney has a pretty healthy community of street photographers.
I wouldn't say like globally notable, but definitely like we have a strong, a solid community. But yeah, definitely like Berlin, Prague, all those places have like, and I find like a lot of the Eastern Bloc cities as well. Like there's some incredible stuff that comes out of there.
It's interesting. This is a side note, but the amount of when you look at photography books in your local photography, in your local kind of like bookshop, it's interesting that there'll be some guides. I mean, most of the guides are actually from Tom Ang, actually. But there's there'll be quite a collection of guides and then a couple of photo books from local photographers or something, and then there's always just this massive chunk of like Soviet architectural photography.
Yeah,
there's like 6 or 7 books every time just on that
brutalist architecture. Yeah. Look, I mean, it's incredible stuff. All right, look, should we wrap that up on street photography?
Yeah. Are there any other like techniques for street photography? Because we kind of talked about the gold panning and then also kind of like the waiting for the frame, the camping. But is there any other really notable kind of techniques?
I mean, I think one of the great street photographers that I like deal with on a regular basis is Mark Gaylor.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't necessarily think of him as a street photographer, but he's a street portraitist more than anything.
Yeah.
But he's very much, in terms of his practice, he's in the street and he does. He just approaches people. He talks a lot about his technique. And I'm probably going to butcher it, but he's very much at this style of like he'll take a photograph of someone, and he's always. I mean, it helps that he's like this extremely approachable Liverpudlian, and so he's just got a great look about him.
Yeah, he was always saying, he'll point the camera at someone, and if they immediately look away, he's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
But if he points the camera and then they don't respond, he's like waving at them. He's like, Like, I'm going to take your photo. Yeah.
He's looking to engage.
Yeah.
And I think people read that, you know, if you as a photographer are like, you put the camera up, they look at you and you're like, oh, you know, like it immediately reads as you're uncomfortable. You're not really ready to engage. And I think it doesn't usually result in a good photograph. So yeah, I mean, I think seeing that style of it's street portraiture is definitely its own kind of practice.
Yeah.
Well, I love street photography. You know, I think I love the visual pun stuff maybe the most because I suck at it. You know, I always appreciate when I see someone who just something that I know I don't have it in me, but I see them doing it and they're just crushing it. You know, it's like, it's not that I've tried so hard to do that kind of thing and it never works out. But it's great to see someone doing it and it's like, it's not that it's hard. Or, I mean, maybe it is that it's hard, but definitely it's not that it's impossible. It's just...
Yeah, right place, right time.
You got to, and you got to, I think it's a skill. You have to build the skill.
Yeah. I think street as a genre is really accessible, even besides the kind of the tension that we've been talking about on this episode.
Yeah.
But for most people that are going on holiday, maybe they bought their first A6400 or something. But, you know, anyone who's just getting into the craft of photography, outside of taking photos of like flowers in your back garden.
Yes.
Street photography is really accessible.
That's true.
And it's
not hardware demanding.
Yeah, it's not hardware demanding. You know, you can do it in your local town. It doesn't have to be in a big city.
Yeah.
Whereas like landscape is a little bit trickier because sometimes you actually do need access to locations that really, you know, make you go wow. Whereas street, you can do that anywhere really, as long as there's a street.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, astro, wildlife, sea life, all that stuff is like you need to spend some money and go to places, and you know it's tough. But street is just outside your door.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what draws so many people to it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us in the studio. Some interesting stuff there to unpack. Yeah,
I always like these chatty ones.
Yeah, that was a very, very chill. All right, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye.